We created rules for a haunted house that shouldn't exist. Now, as adults, we found a house matching its description. Part 7. The third puzzle's solution. Beyond the pungent aroma of what was in the golden containers, it was the safety equipment that clued us in to the acidity of the liquid inside them. If I remember my chemistry classes correctly, Jennifer said, hydrofluoric acid can dissolve many things but not gold. That's why the table, the containers, the key, and the lock on that one chest are all gold. Sure, those containers could be something else, like a beaker made of a plastic that doesn't dissolve, but the gold is a clue to what that substance is. Gold was also very important to alchemists of past eras, Greg observed. Transmutation, the perfection of all matter. Now, hydrofluoric acid or something similar to it could dissolve many plastics, like the plastic of that clear box containing the key, if my guess is right. We can't move those golden containers, Patrick said. They're merged with the table and the table won't budge. So how do we pour the liquid onto the plastic container? We thought about that one for a while. We don't, I eventually said. That's where the chalk comes in. We don't have all the right shapes to solve the puzzle. We're missing a diamond chalk piece. But I'm thinking, based on their size, we have enough pieces of chalk to overflow one golden container. If we place the plastic box holding the key on the table beneath that container, then put all the chalk in to raise the liquid level and overflow the acid, whether it's hydrofluoric or something else, we might be able to melt through that box and get the key out. We'd lose the puzzle because we put the wrong shapes in, but we'd get the key to what I'm assuming is the locked chest. A losing strategy, Patrick said. So what's in the locked chest? I think we're meant to find out, I said. We put the clear plastic box with the key in it right up against the triangle shape on the tabletop. I guess we could have chosen any of the shapes, but if any of them had less total volume than the others, we supposed it would be the triangle. Then I donned the safety equipment, the face protection, the respirator, and the gloves. I insisted because it was the puzzle that, so far, seemed most connected to me. My puzzle. I wanted to be the one to risk my life on it if something in the chalk pieces reacted with the acid and it all exploded in my face. I didn't say that last part to my friends because I didn't want them to worry and talk me out of it. I almost went back to that laboratory to get some forceps and a spatula or something to help me put the chalk in without any of the acid splashing up on me. But I really didn't want to see that Frankenstein thing again. It had parts of each of us, and there was something about it. What if, with the strength we'd already gotten a taste of, it had broken free of its straps after we'd left the room? I put that thought down, put my mind to the puzzle in front of me. I told the others to get back, against the walls, to get ready, not just for the chemical reaction, but for the entities. I would have asked them to leave the room, but if and when the entities came, I didn't want them to be out in the hall. Carefully, so as to avoid splashing, I nudged each piece where I put it on the rim of the open triangle container, letting it slide down while I backed away a little. The substance bubbled and frothed. I did it as quickly as I could while being careful so that we might take advantage of the bubbling to get the substance overflowing. Sure enough, after all the chalk shapes had been placed in, the liquid inside the golden container overflowed. I stepped back and watched with the others as it melted through the clear container that the golden key was in. At the same time, something clicked in a stuttering way, like a machine failing to get started, and then we heard the entities approaching in the hallway outside the room. 1, delay for that jerk to the side. 2, 3. They didn't walk in unison, but you could pick out a few of their footsteps or hoof steps or whatever their lower extremities ended in. We'd failed a puzzle and broken a rule, but intentionally this time. The key, Patrick said. Unlock the chest." All of us started walking towards the table at once. I was surprised we all remembered the rule about not running, rule number 4. That rule also stated that the entities could run if we ran. "Let me handle it," I said. "I've still got my gloves on." I knocked the golden key from the table to the floor in the hopes of getting most or all of the residual acid off. I'd heard stories about people getting poisoned or burned through their gloves. That's why you usually wanted to use a tool like forceps or a spatula to handle such things. "Here we go," I said, picking the key up off the floor. I walked as quickly as I could over to the locked chest in the corner of the room, unlocked its golden lock with the golden key, and dropped the key. My friends were there looking over my shoulder by the time I was opening the chest. Inside were the chalk shapes, another circle, another triangle, another square, and a diamond, which we had been missing before. We had everything we needed to try again. The entities were getting close. While my friends huddled together in the corner of the room furthest from the entryway, I opened all the other containers on the table and tried all of them. Circle for circle, triangle for triangle, square for square, and diamond for diamond. As I was doing diamond, Jennifer and Patrick got to yelling. One of the entities was now in the room with us. I did not turn to look, but I was so quick about the diamond shape that some of the liquid splashed up onto my gloved hand. It seared me through the glove. I didn't know if that was due to the acid or some kind of reaction. I cried out in pain and yanked the glove off. The back of my hand was red, but it wasn't too bad looking. However, I knew that chemical burns could have long-term repercussions. Despite being absorbed in my own pain, I just had to look over my shoulder. No entities. Couldn't hear them coming anymore either. My friends were on me inspecting my hand. "Nobody thought to bring a bottle of water?" Patrick said. "What if we got thirsty?" He shook his head, and then from out of an inner pocket in his sports coat, he took out a water bottle. It had his real estate firm's logo on it. "I came here thinking it was a prank," Jennifer said. "Guess I reckoned that we'd have drinks and refreshments inside once the prank was over." "Well," I said, "that butler on the second floor tried to accommodate us. Too bad none of us can eat or drink broken glass," Greg said. We chuckled a little at that, which helped me through the pain. Patrick poured some water from his water bottle over my hand. That helped some more. It still burned like crazy though. Through all that, I hadn't paid the other clicking and the grating noise much attention. One of the tapestries, the one with the well being poisoned, had fallen to the floor, and there was a small opening in its place. It couldn't have been there before, because we checked behind the tapestries earlier when looking for clues. It was a small opening, not a whole lot larger than an air conditioning duct, but large enough for us to climb into and crawl through. Once again, as with that narrow passage downstairs leading us back, it was dark. Once again, it seemed that something was in there with us. "Sally?" Jennifer said at one point. She was in the rear. She'd stopped crawling behind me. We all did. "Is that you? Say something if that's you." We heard movement. "I think it's behind me," Jennifer said, nearly a whisper. Then the noise stopped. Let's keep going," Jennifer said. "Good call," I said. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. The crawlway ended abruptly. We'd been hoping it might turn and that we'd get to see some light. Some of us got a little panicky. "Wait," Patrick said. He was in the front. "I do see a bit of light." There was a succession of banging noises. Then our tunnel got a lot brighter. When we crawled out and hopped down a few feet, we found ourselves back in the third floor anteroom next to the stairs. Patrick had knocked down one of the paintings, one with a bunch of rusted gears. It had been covering the opening. We'd solved the third floor puzzle. We had needed to lose first in order to win, but we'd passed it. According to the rules, we were free to move up the stairs to the next floor. 2 more floors, and then the attic, and the treasure. For now, the 4th floor awaited us. Part 8, the 4th floor. As I went up the stairs with the others, it was once more like I was being watched. Were the entities like Walt the Stairman, who, for all I knew, was wedged up against a wall and looking down at us? Always there but invisible, or did they only exist in the house when we broke a rule? Were we any closer to understanding what they were? And why did Walt appear for a moment when I mentioned him the first time? These were the kinds of questions that occupied my thoughts, though I didn't bring them up. I think we were all afraid to invoke Walt's name again on the stairs because of what happened before. We got to the 4th floor landing. In the anteroom were mirrors on opposite walls facing each other. On a large table there was a dollhouse that looked exactly like the house we were in. A demon was reaching its hand into the open side of the dollhouse. "It's all right," I said. "It's just a doll. Just a life-size doll, remember?" But we were all tense, and we couldn't stop staring at it as we passed around the dollhouse it had its hand in. The thing was standing outside the dollhouse looking in. Had to be over 6 feet tall. Dark red, horns, eyes without irises. Now where had I seen that before? Intently focused on what it played with in the house. We'd drawn in that life-size demon doll's appearance years ago in one of Greg's sketchbooks, but I couldn't remember that detail about the eyes. Was it something that the house filled in for us? We couldn't help but get closer to the dollhouse on the table, because we had a notion of what we might see inside. Where the dollhouse was open, you could see into the first 4 anterooms along the stairway, as well as some of the other rooms we had been to. But another detail I wasn't sure whether we had put in as kids. The 5th floor and the attic were completely closed off. They were not part of what we could see into. In the dollhouse, standing in the 4th floor anteroom, the same room we are in now, was a doll of each of us, standing in the same exact places we were standing, wearing the same clothes that we were wearing. The life-size demon doll that was outside the dollhouse with the rest of us, its clawed hand was wrapped around the Greg doll. "Did we do all this?" Jennifer said. "I don't know," Greg said. He had his new sketchbook open and was beginning to draw or write something in it, but then he noticed me watching. "Greg," I said, "do you still have the old sketchbooks? The ones with our designs in them?" "I already told you. I'm asking again, do you have them?" "No. Whatever has them," I said. "I think we've got to get them back." "Good luck," Greg said. "You'd have to leave this house and probably search deep in a dump somewhere near where we used to live, if they haven't been pulverized by a trash compactor beyond recognition and become plant food over the years." We opened the door to a sitting room. Being the last person out of the anteroom, I glanced back again at the little dollhouse replica of this house and the life-size demon doll standing outside it. It was still reaching in, but now I was sure that its eye, the right eye that I could see, had moved. Its eye was focused on us. "Hurry," I said, pushing the person in front of me. I closed the door as quickly as I could and told the others what I'd seen. I remember wishing we had put a lock on that door when we were kids. We talked about how, as we got towards the top, more of the things we'd put into the house were going to try to get us to run, to break rule number 4. That was how we had designed it to be, and that was probably what the house was going to try to do when it filled in the gaps, like with the movement of that demon's eye. But we didn't have much of a respite to sit around and chat. Already our hands were full with the 4th floor sitting room. We'd called it a sitting room years ago, but I suppose it might be called a lounge or a waiting room today, a place where guests waited for entry to a ballroom beyond. There were more mannequins in this sitting room, dressed in formal party attire. They sat on upholstered benches, chairs, and couches gathered at the center of the room and against the walls. They held glass receptacles of various murky-colored fluids. It was unclear whether these were for alchemy or for drinking. The container shapes as well as the liquids were ambiguous. There were nasty oddities enough in that room, including stuffed animals mounted on the wall. One of those animals was a human head. I wasn't sure if it was intended to be real. Recalling the sketchbook designs, we'd merely drawn a human head in there. Greg's idea and probably his drawing too. In one corner was a tall curio cabinet, all glass doors with wooden supports. Within that curio cabinet were many jars of preserved things, from the relatively mundane, like pickled pig's feet, to the kinds of stuff that got under your skin and stayed there, like an elephant fetus. I kept thinking about how its pale, gelatinous proto-trunk wrapped around its partially developed body. I wandered closer to the curio cabinet and its jars of preserved things, because I thought I saw a heart in there, maybe human. But Jennifer stopped me. "You got a trap over there," she said, pointing to an inconspicuous closet door next to the cabinet. That closet door started to open. It seemed that I'd already triggered the pressure plate beneath the floor. By the time the door was opening, however, I was already well away. Another mannequin servant came out, like the butler from downstairs. It too came out in a hurry, with all the force of a very large spring. Its forearm was draped with coats, scarves, and purses that dangled back and forth when it stopped. "Might I take that from you?" it said in a recorded voice, similar to the mannequin butlers downstairs. Sticking out from between the items it was carrying were the sharpened ends of coat hangers, unbent and facing outward like spear tips. Seemed it was wanting to take my life from me. "Now, where were you when we entered the house?" Patrick said to the mannequin. He started to take off his coat. "Just kidding. I think I'll hold on to this." It was a good thing, though, that we had triggered that trap, because the door into the ballroom was already locked. Unlike the puzzles, which we didn't have much prior knowledge of because we had not directly created them as kids, we knew the solution already. We knew the key to be in a purse or a coat pocket, in one of the things draped over the mannequin servant's arm. We found it easily enough, as we were heading over to the ballroom door with the key. However, we heard a song coming from the ballroom, from beyond the door. It didn't take us long to recognize. It was the Sleeping Beauty song from the 1959 film. Rather than coming from an old record player like that other song downstairs, however, this one seemed to be coming from a person in the next room who was singing. We thought it sounded like Sally. This was not something we'd planned into the designs at all. After saying as much out loud, we quickly unlocked the door and burst into the ballroom. But the singing stopped as soon as the door had opened. There was no one. No one yet, anyway. The ballroom was pretty empty except for some rows of wooden chairs next to the stage. We sat in 4 of them, close together, and we waited. We waited for the heavy reddish-brown curtains like the color of old blood, to open. After a minute of us sitting in silence, broken only by our heavy breathing and my heart thumping in my chest, the lights in the ballroom dimmed. The curtains swooshed open. Lit up on stage was a ventriloquist dummy and a man. Rather, a ventriloquist dummy and the corpse of a man. The corpse sagged in its chair. Its tuxedo was barely recognizable. Rotting goop pooled at its feet. As soon as the curtains had opened, the smell had hit us like a dump truck carrying dead bodies. But the ventriloquist dummy on the corpse's hand was upright, facing us. It began to talk. My, what a lovely audience we have here. Are you ladies and gentlemen ready to see some magic? The dummy assaulted us with a series of bad jokes, many of them having to do with its dead and decaying partner. It proceeded to do some equally bad card tricks, at one point flinging the cards down directly at us. "Tough crowd," it said. "But not to worry, ladies and gentlemen. My final trick is going to put you on pins and needles and leave you there. Well, one of you. I'll need a volunteer from the audience. Please note that it is necessary for someone to volunteer. Otherwise, things could get very awkward indeed." At that point, the dummy talked in a different voice, like its mouth was partly closed, as if it was giving a voice to the dead man that propped it up. "Hey, partner, it's not considered volunteering if it's required." While the dummy argued with an inanimate rotting corpse, the rest of us debated who should go up. We thought we had a pretty good idea of what we'd face up there. All of us started to say we would be the one to do it. This was both a blessing and a curse, because while it showed how much we cared about each other, it also made it more difficult to decide. "No offense, guys," Jennifer said, "but the rest of you aren't exactly petites. We need the smallest person of us to go up there. That's me." "That may be true," Patrick said, "but Greg's bonier than you are, taller, but a little thinner. Not that I'm trying to throw him under the bus, just pointing that out." "Look," I said, "maybe we should draw straws or something. There's gotta be something here we could use for straws." "No, it's fine," Greg said. His face was contorted. "I'll do it." We argued back and forth for a while, but after little progress, decided to just let Greg do it. We thanked him a lot. "Want me to hold on to that sketchbook for you?" I said. "Sure," he said. He opened it up and wrote or drew some things with his pencil, then sighed and handed me both his pencil and sketchbook. I opened up the sketchbook and flipped through it as he walked up to the stage. There were notes and rough sketches about some of the things we'd seen, as well as some notes and diagrams for the puzzles we'd solved. On the last page, before a whole lot of blank pages, was this note: "You guys are the best. No matter what happens, silver lining, we got the chance to do this together. If something does happen to me, tell my wife and kid, well, make something up, whatever's clever. G." By the time I'd glanced up from his sketchbook, Greg was on the stage with the dummy and the corpse. The dummy whooped and clapped at Greg as he approached. The dead body in the chair jerked around because of the movement of the dummy on its arm, causing it to deposit yet more fluid and matter to the puddle at its feet. Then the dummy yelled, "Bring out the Iron Maiden!" Here was the other torture trap alluded to in that mannequin's open book in the second-floor drawing room. A large metal cabinet, its shape suggesting a bloated human body, screeched forward. It moved from out of the darkness towards the front of the stage. It must have been on a rail. I could not see who, if anyone, was pushing it. The head-like protrusion at the top of the Iron Maiden depicted a stylized human face caught in the extremes of pain. When the Iron Maiden stopped moving forward, it opened up, revealing the sharp metal spikes that covered the inside of it. The dummy said, "Now get on in and make yourself as big as you can. Think big thoughts. Trust me, I'm a magician." We did not trust the dummy. By the way, never trust a ventriloquist dummy whose partner is a rotting corpse. According to what we'd put on one of Greg's old sketchbooks years ago, the spikes should be just long enough, or just short enough, to not touch the person inside if they were very careful. If, however, any pressure whatsoever were applied to those spikes, the spikes would extend fully and pierce the body within. Greg waved to us from the stage. We told him to be careful. I firmly believe that all of us, Greg included, were praying that the trap would perform as we'd designed it. A moment later, Greg was inside. Another moment, and it was closing. Then it snapped shut. We heard muffled screams. Blood oozed out from the bottom of the Iron Maiden torture device. The dummy laughed and laughed. We called out to Greg, started to rush the stage. I was on the verge of breaking the house rules about running when we heard Greg's muffled voice from within the Iron Maiden. "It's okay, guys," he said. "I'm all right. The house is doing that, not me." When the Iron Maiden opened up, he was covered in what looked like blood. Thankfully, none of it was his own. We used the stage curtains to try to get that nasty stuff off him. No telling whose blood it was, or if it was even blood. It was thick, weird. The texture and smell were off. The dummy was cackling at us. "Get out of here," it said between its laughter. "Show's over. The door's unlocked. Don't let it hit you on the way out." I can't say we were happy, but we were eager to oblige. We got out and found ourselves in a hall. It was similar to the one directly beneath us on the previous floor, yet it did not have a pit with leg snare ropes. There was another trap, one we anticipated but was still difficult to navigate. The smooth floor at one point shifted beneath us, becoming a ramp. We had to hold on to each other in the walls to keep from running downhill unintentionally. If you ran, you broke rule number 4. Not only would the entities come after you, but they would be running. We didn't know if they'd stop running if we stopped. Didn't want to test it. Not only that, the rule suggested they'd be faster than us. In a way, this prepared us for the puzzle room beyond, the 4th floor puzzle. Like both the hallway on the previous floor and this one, the puzzle room seemed to be the same size as the one beneath us, about like a slightly below average sized bedroom. We walked in and we were yet again taken aback by what was there. What dominated this puzzle room was this gigantic, people-sized hamster or gerbil wheel at the center. Here again, the center of the room was where the puzzle should be according to our designs. Another standout object was a statue, nearly 5 feet high, of a white elephant. It was next to a wall. A broom with a dustpan attached to it was in a corner. On the other side of the room, there was a coffee table with a sparkling orb made of bottle caps on top of it. There was a mound of something like sand or salt on the floor next to the entrance of the room. On one wall was an illustration that we immediately recognized as Greg's. It was this cartoony, poster-sized thing showing a giant hamster in a runaround wheel, sprinting like mad. Its wheel had broken loose from its base and was creating a path of devastation through a city. Dead bodies and busted-up vehicles were in its wake. It was goofy. It was grisly. It was Greg. We all remembered Greg putting that into this room years ago, even though back then we did not consciously know that it would be a clue to the puzzles we hadn't created, like for the other clues and the other puzzles. We all looked at him and waited. There were only 2 more people whose puzzle this could be, Sally or Greg. Greg's illustration seemed to give us our answer. "Okay," Greg said. "Okay, I never told anyone this, well, other than Sally, but I used to have a pet hamster. It seems like a small thing, but it was a big deal to me. Never had a pet since. This was before we'd made a regular occurrence out of our haunted house designing back in that apartment complex. I had this pet hamster, right? A very good pet hamster. About as well behaved as a hamster could be. Played well, never bit me once, but it bit my aunt's when she stuck her finger into its terrarium and was waving it around, as some animals will do if you get too cozy with them, and she let that bite get infected. Well," he licked his lips. He stared down at his shoes. "At some point she had to go to the hospital for her infection, caused by such a simple thing, just a harmless little hamster bite that she clearly hadn't taken care of like she should. She got better from that infection, but that wasn't the end of it. Kept complaining about what she'd suffered and about her hospital bill. and about how that hamster was a threat to other people. One thing led to another until one day she went into my room in our apartment while I was at school, when she was supposed to be visiting my mother or something, and she euthanized the little guy, to put it lightly. That's terrible, Jennifer said. Well, yeah, Greg said, but it taught me something important. Important lessons, you know? When people feel threatened, even by a relatively harmless animal minding its own business, they often want to end that threat. Could have been revenge, Patrick said. Hospital bills are no joke. I don't think that's it, Greg said. But anyway, can't bring it back no more than I can bring back my childhood. What are you gonna do? Well, we can try to solve this puzzle, Jennifer said. We might not be able to bring your old hamster back, but maybe we can still save our old human friend Sally, or save her soul at the very least. Greg looked at her. Right, he eventually said. We went about the room and studied the clues more carefully. Here are the clues for the 4th floor puzzle. A giant-sized hamster or gerbil wheel large enough for people to run around in. It could not be moved or started from the outside. We did not want to get inside and try to move it from there yet, because we were all afraid this would activate the puzzle. When we ran our hands over the inside of it, we found it to be very smooth, maybe too smooth to get good traction on, but there were slightly raised metal bands along the inside at about 6 feet intervals. These were also very smooth, suggesting you'd slip off from them if you tried to walk or run on them. A statue of a white elephant. The white elephant was probably a little over 4 feet tall and about 5 feet in length, not counting its trunk. We were able to move and even lift it, but it was solid and about as heavy as one of us. Its trunk curled out in front of it, forming a loop. A sparkling orb made of bottle caps. It was on a little pedestal atop an ordinary wooden coffee table. The orb was probably about 3 feet in diameter. Beside the entrance, a mound of what we thought likeliest to be salt, based on its appearance. We weren't about to taste test that stuff. This mound was roughly 3 feet across and about a ½ inch deep. A simple wooden broom with a dustpan, Greg's cartoony illustration on the wall of a gigantic hamster and a gigantic wheel running amok through a city, causing damage. Broken things and dead bodies lay in its wake. Despite its goofy and grisly nature, you could tell how afraid the hamster was, even though it was the one causing all the damage. The hamster wheel puzzle appeared to be asking us to get inside and run, but how would we do that without violating the 4th rule? This was the rule we least wanted to break, because not only would the entities come after us, they'd be running too.